Okay, so welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you join us today. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about all things summer. Today's webinar is about getting a jump start on your summer planning. And so that those of you that are spending a little time on January 8th, kudos to you for getting that jump start. A couple of logistics on today's webinar, and most of you are webinar veterans, so you would expect all of this. If you have questions, please use the Q&A box, not the chat box. It'll be much easier for us to keep up with questions. There will be a recording of this webinar shared tomorrow, as well as these presentation materials. And these summer planning webinars oftentimes can become almost like a query engine of what about this program? What about this program? What about this program? We'll share with you our summer Matchpoint database of over 800 opportunities, which is a great place to start for finding specific summer opportunities. With that as a proviso, I'm Bob Carlton, and I'm so grateful to be with you today. Each of us is going to share just for a second what we did in summers during our high school years. I did summer musicals at a local community center and just loved it. Flash forward to now, I love working with teenagers and helping them connect their aptitudes, skills, and motivators and careers to their summer activities. Allison.
I had the wonderful opportunity to spend one summer in Ireland and then another summer in Spain. And then I actually spent a year and a half in Spain as an exchange student during high school. I am such a nerd about summer and students, and I love seeing how students can deepen and connect their interests from the school year into their summer activities, and even deepen activities that they do year after year to include more leadership or mentoring as they get older.
And I am Claudia Salinas, and I spent my summer as part of a leadership program called National Hispanic Institute. So I did that like every single year because I'm a super nerd and that's what I do. But what I really love doing as I work with students is helping them sort of make these tough decisions between what options they want to move forward with. So I think there's so many different things they can take advantage of. And so I help them weigh those options appropriately.
And I'm Lisa Carlton, and let's see, in my summer, I worked at a department store, and it was so much fun because I got to work in the housewares department and make all the displays and all those things. So that was a lot of fun and something that I did over numerous summers and into college. And it was a great learning experience for me. I will add that Claudia on our team also does come from an admissions background, so she'll be talking a little bit about that when she's talking about how colleges look at summer programs. I think my favorite thing about doing summer planning with students now is helping them connect maybe really different things in their resume. So maybe things that don't look like they go together, but how could we mix those up and make something that then is something the student really loves because it connects multiple interests. And so I think that's my favorite thing. I will say College Matchpoint as a company, I would say that activity planning, if we had a theology, I think we do believe that students engaging and trying new things and progressing in those is really good for them, not just good for the college process, good for them as human beings.
Great. And as Lisa mentioned, in our 15 years of working with students, these summer activities are easy to cynically think of in terms of they're the most important part of the journey to college, and they can be, but they really are important to helping prepare a student to thrive in college, not simply thrive as an applicant to college, but to thrive in college. Today's agenda. We're going to talk about why summer is such a great opportunity for engagement. What does engagement look like? Where should summer planning start? How can parents nurture that engagement? And then finally, how do colleges consider engagement?
So let's talk a little bit about why summer is such a great opportunity. I think the first thing is kind of obvious, which is, at least in theory, students have a little more time in summer. And even if they're busy in summer, it's a different kind of busy because they're not in school with like all the homework and that. Another reason that summer is such a great opportunity is for some students, the school year is hard to make time for engagement. And yet we know that engagement is good for students. Students who are engaged are 2.5 times more likely to get good grades and feel motivated. They're more likely to be hopeful. And especially in this post-COVID era, these are all things that we're really all looking to try to encourage in students. So finding ways, summer being one of the great ways to do that, is a fantastic opportunity. Now, there certainly are some myths about summer. I'm not going to read all these to you. I'm going to pick a couple of my favorites. Number one, the only way to have a great summer is to choose a paid summer program and spend a whole lot of money. That is absolutely not true. And you'll see today as we highlight things, many of our students don't spend a dime and many of them are actually making money during summer. So you do not have to do a formal program to do that. The other thing I would say is that there's a specific recipe of how to do this. And if you don't do it that way, it's not going to be successful. The best summers are those that really represent the student and their passions. And so there's no recipe for that because all our students are different and bring different things to the table. And I mean, I'm sometimes shocked at the unique things students can kind of put together. I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of that. So it's kind of the opposite of a recipe, I would say. And I'll let you read through the rest, but there's definitely are some myths out there about summer. It's important to be aware that they actually are myths, even if they get repeated a lot. So one of the things that is important as we think about summer is what kind of skills do students want to develop in the summer, okay? So one of the things that we work with students on is identifying what kinds of things they personally feel like they need to develop. And what this slide shows, which is really interesting, it shows Clark University showing the skills they want students to have. And what we're noticing is that colleges are becoming more clear on what they are looking for in students. And those can be hard skills like coding, but it's also a lot of soft skills like working with a team, being able to manage their own stress, being able to work with others, caring about others. So one of the things that's important is that colleges are definitely increasing their emphasis on skills. And I think it's very healthy for kids because most of these skills are things that ultimately help kids thrive in college.
So as Lisa mentioned, I come from an admissions background. So I spent 20 years in highly selective admissions before transitioning to this side of the desk. And I think one of the things that families and students have a hard time digesting is sort of how is engagement being digested by the colleges? And so we use this fun graphic to help break down this concept for our students. But yes, we want at the center of everything, academics and rigor is what colleges and universities are really looking for, but it's not the only thing, especially as you start looking at more selective schools. But any school wants to have a really nice, healthy community, which contain all three of these areas. So they really want students who can be intellectually curious and engage with one another. And that can look like a whole lot of different things. It could mean special projects, and it can mean all kinds of things. We have Fit to Major, which is how are they exploring their their career interest and how is it connecting back to their institution. And then also common good. And this is the one I like to emphasize just because I think for a long time, colleges did not do a good job of saying what they wanted. They just said, we're looking for well-rounded students. And I think that created a whole other can of worms of problems for colleges and universities. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a minimum number of hours of service. What common good means is like, what are you doing to help your community? Where is your positive impact in the world? And a lot of times what clues students into what all of this is and what it means to a college is to go back to those vision and mission statements that each college and university has. So that could be a great way for you to look at it, but that's certainly what colleges and universities in their admissions office are keeping close to their heart as they're doing the evaluation.
I want to piggyback on one thing Claudia said. You are seeing more and more schools ask students to reflect and write about how they've impacted their community, how they've changed the world, what kind of diverse environments they've been a part of. And so we find that students have an opportunity for that, oftentimes in the summer, to go past their comfort zone, to step into more involvement. And it can be based on an initial interest that they developed in YMSL or in delivering the service hours at their school, but it's building on that.
And so as we're starting to look at like how are colleges evaluating that engagement, it's circling back to those larger points of how are you becoming a great human being? Because colleges want to continue building on that. They're in the business of people, not necessarily just churning out people to go to work. So they look at themselves as a societal value. And so as we're looking at colleges and universities as a public good, they're wanting to see sort of like, well, how are you engaging in your academic interest? That could look like AP classes or pushing your academics and your rigor, but it could also look like a fun summer project. It can look like research. It can look like lots of different things. There can be free online classes. So you don't have to limit yourselves in terms of the engagement you do over the summer. In fact, if anything, that opens up a whole lot of room for creativity in terms of connecting your interest with your skills and what you want to grow into. Colleges, because they see themselves as a public good, want to understand what do you as a student care about? What do you care about? It's not that you have to care about the same things, you just have to care about something, okay? So there's not a right or wrong thing to care about, but what is right or wrong is to do something about it. So how are you getting involved with those areas? And that really is what makes a difference. And then how are you stepping up in that engagement? So how are you stepping into the roles to make things happen? How are you stepping into different places and spaces to learn new skills, to relate to others, to be able to develop leadership? And so that's a big piece of the puzzle here as well when it comes to the evaluation process.
And I would just now piggyback on what Claudia said on this one, which is, yeah, we're all piggybacking on Claudia here, is that one of the things here that's important is what she said. I just want to like highlight it with a marker. It's really genuinely what you care about. I think that I notice students working so hard to try to find the right thing. It's the thing you really care about. And so I just want to highlight that because I feel like this common good area is this really sticky point that students struggle with, we find quite a bit, because they're looking for the perfect thing. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing. It has to be the thing you care about. So I just really want to highlight that because I think it's exceptionally important.
And it's also okay to explore a little bit until you find the thing you care about, right? So sometimes doing one thing will lead you somewhere else. So I always tell my students, you can't lose when you explore. You can't lose.
Very good point.
So at a base level, if you are exploring your academic interest and you're engaging in common good and you're trying to see what you like, you're going to go to college. Okay, but some of you are aiming at some of these more highly selective schools or really highly selective majors. So for instance, computer science and business are becoming more selective as part of a national trend. But when we start looking at highly selective colleges, they want to see impact. How are you taking this to a high level? You know, school impact is a good start, but is not usually what sets you apart in a competitive applicant pool. So those are things to kind of keep in mind, is that the more selective your school is, the more they're wanting to see state, national, and international level engagement. So those are some things to kind of keep in mind. They want to see how you're leaving a legacy. You know, is this something that you've created just for the admissions process? Or is this something that you have been able to convince others, persuade others? Ooh, ding, ding, another little skill there, persuasion, negotiation, to also join in on your cause and to now have that carry through over time, over multiple years, not just in your particular presence. So are the students after you taking up your cause or the things that you really are enjoying? For STEM students, this is going to be an even bigger point, but they want to see engagement over time. Okay, so how are you coming into the world of STEM? How are you engaging in that? So like, how are you exploring it? If you're a computer science student, a lot of times we'll see a student starting to get into the coding and experiencing that, and they'll learn coding languages, and then they stop. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing with this coding that you've learned? What is the next step for you? How are you applying it? So they're going to want to see that multi-year engagement of exploration in order to kind of see what direction you're moving to in STEM, because that's a really big world and there's many places to be a part of. And then the last point here on independent research is that, yes, research is a great way to demonstrate intellectual curiosity, but I will say it is not the only way to demonstrate intellectual curiosity. I have lots of students take on really fun projects, create really fun apps, find ways in which they're not merging areas between their curiosities and intellect with things that they want to do for the common good. So whether it's this STEM student who's building accessible ramps with Legos, or if they're doing other things through an app to diagnose ailments, there's all kinds of things that students can do to take on those projects. So when we're looking at the highly selective schools, they're looking for a student who's taken it to another level.
And then one of the things we wanted to show you here is just how does that ultimately translate to a resume, right? To actually, how are you going to show this? Ultimately, for some of you, maybe you're younger, your students haven't gotten to that application phase, all of this is going to translate into a resume where you're able to show what you've actually done. So that is kind of when we take all this together and say, how's it going to ultimately look to college? It's going to be two spots. One is your resume, which most colleges will take, not all. And the other spot is on the common application when you're showing your activities. So we always like to kind of show the end spot of how colleges are going to look at this as you're beginning to think about what you might want to do.
Allison, you've literally seen thousands of resumes in your work with students. What do you typically see them note in a resume beyond just I participated in this or I did this?
It's really, I always call it like the special sauce. It's really related to kind of a little bit of what Lisa and Claudia both talked about, which are those softer skills, maybe of you, and not only did you participate in the Chinese club, but you actually thought of a way to get more people involved. And in fact, you thought of a way to get more freshmen involved, and you promoted it on Instagram. So it's really looking for like, not only how did you participate, but what did it look like when you, Johnny, participate, right? What does that look like? Oh, I'm always the person that brings a friend. I'm always the person that makes the flyer. I'm always the person that, gets others involved, that kind of thing. That is really what takes an activity from just being an activity and actually makes it into a story.
Now, types of summer opportunities. There are hundreds of them, and we could spend the entire rest of the afternoon, evening, and week doing a deep dive into all the different programs. And if that's something you're interested in, boy, do we have a website for you. Our Summer Matchpoint website is super helpful for students and parents and counselors who are trying to do that research and exploration. You can navigate it by month, you can navigate it by subject area. It includes free programs, fee-based programs, online programs, hybrid programs. We really are trying to follow the families that are out there who are really eager to say, I know what I want, what are my options? And we always encourage students and parents, while you might fall in love with one, make sure you have options. And as Lisa said in the myth slide, don't wait till July. Some of these programs actually have deadlines in January and February, and no one enjoys waiting until the official start of summer, June 21st, to look up and say, I wonder what we're going to do this summer. So again, we'll share the link for this in the follow-up note, but we find thousands of students and families and high schools across the country using Summer Matchpoint to do the research and find the programs they're interested in. Okay, with that as a little background, let's talk about these types of programs. And we've alluded to many of these beforehand. As Lisa said, some folks approach this and think, well, it's all about fee-based programs. It's all about what some people call pay to play. And that may be a summer camp that a student has gone to all her life. That may be a formal pre-college program. And there are certainly reasons for both of those programs. But we want to underscore that a student taking a summer job, particularly in an area that interests them, a student traveling and really applying her interest to that travel, and certainly, as Claudia underscored, a student taking time in the summer to dive deeper into caring for others, in translating that involvement they might have taken during the year in community service to taking initiative and ultimately impacting a community they're in, is a powerful, powerful summer. Now, is it a one-size-fits-all environment? Some families say, I think this is like Google Maps. I have this resume from a friend of mine who got into Yale or UT or Pomona. And if I just follow the directions that they have, I'll end up at the same school. The answer bluntly is they already got in that school. And just following them doesn't really help you stand out. And it certainly won't be motivating. We find that students who are singularly motivated by, I'm doing this because I think it looks good to a college, rarely end up having a sensational summer. On the other hand, some students are so active that they don't need summer planning. And in fact, they might need a break to go outside, to enjoy the summer. Summer plans can be from 1 week to the entire summer. And the other thing is, all of this can translate to what they do during the school year. If you think of it as two distinct things, it really misses the engagement that Lisa talked about, the motivation, the propulsion that a student can have from their academic year to their summer year to ultimately going off to college. Now, summer planning changed pretty dramatically over the span of the pandemic, and whether or not we think it's over or the CDC tells us the next variant is coming, it's really changed things. We don't have to tell anybody on this webinar that these students navigated a very different 3 years of engagement, but bluntly, so did parents. Parents had to wear hats of summer camp counselor, college counselor, tutor. And in some cases, they're tired of putting hats on, to be blunt. Teachers and school counselors have had to shift between virtual and online and then back to in-person. And in some school districts, there are fewer teachers or school counselors this year than there were even in the peak of the pandemic. The good news is these changes have created a host of virtual opportunities that are not place-based. Some of them are hybrid. It's just spectacular. And then the final piece, just like every other part of society, college admissions has been and is still being fundamentally disrupted by a whole host of issues that have come up during the pandemic and by issues that were exacerbated during the pandemic. Now, Lisa, in terms of community service, do you want to talk, sorry, Allison, do you want to talk a little bit about how community service can be such a powerful impact for students?
Absolutely. And as we've been saying all along, it's really not the activity that makes the difference. It's basically how that activity relates to the student, what knowledge, skills, initiative, impact, curiosity. So it's really part of a student story that makes that activity significant. It's why and how the student engaged in that particular activity at that particular time and what difference it made to them. And so for that reason, there's lots of options that will look very different because students are very different. Community service is one of my favorites. And I always tell students that, you know, a lot of students have kind of a narrow view of what service is. Okay, service means Austin Pets Alive. Service means sorting food, and all of that is very valuable. But service also means I actually started weeding my neighbor's garden because he wasn't as mobile. That's service too. And so one of the things, again, if the student is curious, passionate, connected, part of a community, then those opportunities are relevant, right? We had a student who during the pandemic really loved to play the violin and missed sharing music. And so she started, her service was playing what she called doorstep duets, where she and another student came and rang the doorbell and said, "Can we play you a song in your yard?" And so service can look like that. Service can also be more traditional and can involve charitable organizations. We've also had students address needs of, wow, I noticed there were a lot of kids in my neighborhood that didn't have things to do. So I ran a 2-hour sports camp in our local park. So it can be traditional, but it also can be unconventional. The thing that I always try to help students see is the more we can connect whatever contribution that they're making to a community to a larger common good cause, the better. And so that way, that student is exploring and that student is learning and connecting with like-minded people that might also be committed to that initiative or common good area. Anybody want to hop on that? Say anything else?
I would add one thing, and that is a little pet peeve of mine, I guess, is that there's so much, and it's a pet peeve because I worry that kids are putting all this energy into something that maybe isn't delivering for them, both personally or in the college process. And that is the over focus on building all these huge number of hours. So but they don't relate to anything that the student actually cares about. It's just about the hours. I do not see that moving the dial. I haven't seen that move the dial. And I think we're giving kids the wrong message about what service is, bottom line. And we're missing an opportunity to help students reflect on what they really care about. And maybe it's worth adding here that at the end of the day, the college admissions process is a highly reflective process. And it's really hard to reflect about, oh, I just ran into my teacher's class and cleaned the chalkboard so I could get an hour or something. Do you know what I mean? There's not a lot to say about that usually. So I think sometimes we just need to slow down and step back and say, why are we doing this? And I unfortunately still see this run for hours going up. So I would encourage you guys, your kids are busy. They do need some time outside. They do need these things. One of the ways to kind of bring the noise down a little bit is to stop running for the hours, run for things that your student actually genuinely cares about. And if they don't know that, one other thing is help them do a few things as a family. If your student's younger and they're just like, I have no clue, a great opportunity is for you guys to do some service together. That's my soapbox. I'm done. Sorry.
Well, and I don't use the word service with my students. I say contribution. How are you contributing? Because it can happen on the Highline dance team where you invite a freshman that seems isolated, that's contribution, right? And I feel like that helps differentiate between service hours. What impact are you making on people or communities or organizations that's positive? There's a lot of really cool online stuff that has developed during the pandemic. One of the things I love so much about a lot of the online opportunities that have sprung up is a lot of them are teen-led. So these are projects that were started by teens for teens. They are cool, they are fun, they are interesting, they are online. And so going to our webpage and checking out service and looking at all the different, I can't even list the number of online service opportunities that I've learned about in the last couple of weeks. Phenomenal. Also, there are scientific communities that are adding in online volunteers to help just count data. So anywhere, all sorts of opportunities there. Students are all, in fact, I had a couple of students today ask me, is it okay if I get a summer job? And the answer is yes. When we take it out of the activity being the prize here, and really the student having knowledge, skills, initiative, impact, interest, it can be through anything that the student explores that and develops that. A summer job is great. I was talking with a student today about how a summer job can take a high school student and turn it into a college student because you have to get up, you have to maybe do things that maybe you didn't know how to do and you have to learn. You might have to deal and communicate with people that you don't know, aren't familiar with, and maybe aren't as easy for you to communicate with. All sorts of terrific skills in a summer job that actually make you college ready and ready to contribute to a campus community. So the answer is yes. Internships, I'm going to start, and then Claudia, I'm going to let you take over here. One of the things that I think is so important for families to know, couple things. These are questions that come up a lot from students and families. A lot of times when students or families hear the word internship, they think it must be full-time, it must be all summer, and some of my students feel like, well, then it must be paid. For high school students, an internship is considered robust. If we're talking 1, 2, 3 weeks, 10, 15 hours a week, and if you go above that, fantastic. Does it matter if it's with family members? Absolutely not. That's going to be a large piece of the opportunities that are available for high school students. So if you're shadowing your dad or your uncle, or you're assisting your mom with her, finance career, all of that, totally fine, totally counts. Great opportunity to explore. Claudia, anything else you want to say about internships?
Have fun with it. It should be something that's interesting to you, not just to check a box. So enjoy the things that you want. I also think it's important to have a goal. What are you trying to learn? So that could also help you sort of get your arms around what you're trying to get out of this experience, but could also help your internship site, whether it's a person or a project, sort of be able to give you a task that's aligned with what you want to do.
Two things I want to jump in here on, because I work with so many students who do an internship during the summer. First off, students aren't going to find this themselves. They can't go online and search job boards. This is almost always going to come from the parents' network of friends and colleagues. And two, honestly, for a student that's considering a commitment to a major, it's just a good idea to try it out. Yes. To say, I think I might want to be a data science major, but frankly, I've never seen anyone who does it professionally. Oftentimes a student comes back from that internship and it profoundly motivates them to dive deeper. But I always joke with students, the second best outcome of an internship is no, I never want to do that again. I hate that job. And the good news is, great, you skipped the opportunity to major in that and then have to change your major or transfer. Now, Claudia, do you want to take over and talk a little bit about pre-college programs?
Yes. So pre-college programs are a lot like a Las Vegas buffet. Okay, there are a lot of options. If you walk around, you might be a little overwhelmed. So it's a good idea to have a plan, an idea of what it is that you're looking for. Some of us focus exclusively on crab, and that's okay. Okay, but as you are looking at your buffet of options with pre-college programs, it's important to understand that there's a lot of variety in the same way that there's a lot of variety in buffets in Vegas. Okay, so we want to make sure that you understand a few things as you're starting to think about this. One, often, a whole lot of times, these programs are taking place on a college campus, and that has a benefit to it. So students get to see what a college campus looks like. Often they may be even housed in that college, so they can check out the dorms. They can start developing a sense between different types of institutions, because much like summer programs, colleges and universities are their own buffet, which that's another conversation for another day, because I like to talk food. Okay, so as we continue on with this, I think it's important for you to have that goal in mind. Are you trying as a student to explore a specific topic? Are you wanting to work on a particular project? Are you interested in earning some college credit? I mean, or is this really, I just want to know more about this area? And much the same way that you're exploring with internships to try things on, summer programs can be an opportunity to try things on as well, okay? But having a goal will help you center yourself in this exploration, okay? So like, take advice from Claudia, focus on the crab and go after what's most delicious for you. Okay, that's what you want to do. Now, the side thing to this is like Vegas, some of these buffets can run expensive. Okay, I've been to some fairly expensive buffets in Vegas because I'm a foodie and I'm happy to pay for that. Not everyone's ready to pay the sticker price for some of these programs. Okay, so they run the full gamut. There are some that are very pricey, and that there are even some that are free, but may require an application process. But that's part of the work that you as a family and as students are going to have to do, is to look for what opportunities are out there for your students.
And
Claudia,
I would
you were,
add one. Oh, sorry,
ahead.
Bob, go ahead. Ask your question first.
Yeah, Claudia, you were at Rice most
Mhm.
recently. And when you were at Rice, if a student did a pre-college program at Rice, did it improve her odds of being admitted to Rice?
Great question. Absolutely not. So I think that if you're wanting to explore a particular campus because you're interested in that school, so for example, if you want to do the Cornell summer programs because you're interested in Cornell, I think the advantage in going is seeing the lay of the land, seeing campus, seeing the potential faculty you could work with, having an understanding of that environment. But in terms of the admissions office, really it's about your whole overall application. So it's not just the summer program, it's the summer program plus how does this fit into your goals? How does this fit into that intellectual curiosity? How does it fit into your common good? How does this fit into your potential major? Okay, so by itself, it does not move the needle. In conjunction with the bigger idea of what you are exploring, what you think you want to do, it can have an impact.
And I would add to that, I think one of the things is I love pre-college programs more at the younger end of, like, you know, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute. So I think one of the things that Claudia is saying is, so what did you do with it after too? Like, so you went to a pre-college program and you got all jazzed about architecture. Then what did you do? Did you learn CAD? Did you, like, in other words, like, where did you take it? I think is how you develop more with your engagement. And that's really, really important.
Okay, so diving a little bit deeper, there's some really incredible programs out there for exploring your interests. And so we just highlighted a few here. I will note that Girls Who Code is one of those that does offer free programming for girls to learn how to code. And it's a great way to kind of start connecting with your particular potential area of study. Okay, so that is probably the most popular format I've seen students use summer programs for, is to explore those areas that might be a little bit harder for them to explore on their own. And in particular, like vet programs or sometimes medical programs, where you might not be of sufficient age to be in a specific hospital setting or to really like witness surgeries, because, you know, I don't know if you would ever want to be in my surgery. That's a no-go for me. Like that's you want to be able to see where you can get those learning experiences from. So if you're looking at it from an exploration point of view, I think summer programs can really fit the bill for some areas where it can be hard to get some experiences in otherwise. But also, there's all kinds of programs out there. So some of the things that have been noted here are, there are some that are by specific interest in terms of major, but there are also programs out there by specific topics. So like you might be interested, and I like to pick on the Naval Academy because they do offer a summer seminar. And if you're interested in the academies, guess what? You have to be physically fit. Guess who would not survive? This person right here would not survive boot camp. Okay. So so if you think that's something that you want to do, what a wonderful way to explore that option if you're going to serve our country by having an experience of what boot camp is. Kudos to all those who have served, because again, not built for physical fitness. The other piece, I just like to eat, nothing more. If we are looking at the other types of programs that exist here, there are some that can be very valuable to your experience. And so we have touched upon these summer programs that are focused on a specific major or area of study, but there are also summer programs out there that are more about immersing you into the particular profession. And so they may be hosted on college campuses, but are actually led by professionals who are outside of the realm of that campus, who are actually practitioners in that field. So that's another way to kind of get some really great experiences in as well.
One of the examples I see on that, because I work with a number of young men who love sports, and they happen to love fantasy football or all things sports statistics. For those of y'all that tracking, Buffalo Bills are having a great Sunday. I just want to underscore that. There are fabulous programs where students can go away to a one-week program and meet other sports data nerds that they never could meet in their home experience. And as Lisa was saying, as a student who's a rising sophomore or junior, that can be transformational. That can allow them to say, I don't just love sports, I'm not gonna be a scholarship athlete, but I am gonna go on to college and merge my deep aptitudes for math with my interest in sports statistics. Claudia, can you also talk a little bit about independent research?
Yes. So I actually am a person who likes independent research, but it's not for all students. None of these programs are for all students. Okay, so this is where you have to have a little bit of self-awareness and have a willingness to examine yourself. Okay, if you are already a student who is at a high level of intellectual curiosity and you're ready to take it to another level, I think independent research can be a really awesome option. Now, it allows you to dive in deeper. So a lot of times there are programs out there that will teach you how to narrow your focus in a specific field so that you can get your arms around it. Because some of these topics are big and they're new and they're fun and we just don't know what to do with it, right? So we need a little bit of mentoring or help with that. Other times, we want to make sure that we understand what our goal of these projects are. Is it simply to understand? Is it to practice a particular skill set within a lab? Are you trying to have a deliverable? Deliverable, sorry, being that, are you interested in summarizing your experience in a paper? Are you trying to show that you were able to take your coding to another level by building a program? So there's some markers there that you need to have for yourself in terms of seeing whether or not you've made progress in your development in this area. So I think if you are ready and you are a student who wants to do independent research or high-level independent projects, this might be a good option for you. But again, it's not for all students. And if you are a student who's thinking highly selective, you don't have to have the research and still go highly selective. Okay, it's nice if that's something that you want to do, but not necessary. Now, Polygens is an example of one of these projects. And what the reason why I like Polygens is, yes, you can do traditional research, but they are also a place that really helps students to kind of figure out projects as well. So if your jam is not to do research, like that doesn't sound fun, exciting to you, they will work with you to create other projects that have just as much intellectual curiosity as a research paper can do. So sometimes, for instance, we have a lot of artists or composers or people who are aspiring into that performing arts level. Sometimes research is not where it's going to help you. Maybe your exploration is like, I really am interested in composition and I have no idea how to write any music in that way. How do I start? So these kinds of guided endeavors can really help students sort of, number one, dive in deeper, but number two, once they're diving in deeper, is this the direction they still want to go in? So you still always have to have a goal. You still always have to reflect and really see what the impact of this experience is for you as a student.
And
I would
Claudia, like you guys said before, and then what, right? And then what? You do the program and then what?
And then the other thing I would say about research is check your school. Oftentimes there are some great research programs already set up in high schools, whether it's a public school or a private school. Oftentimes they're not that well advertised. So if research is something you want to do, before you slap down a bunch of money, go find out what your school offers and see if it could match your needs. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But I just want to highlight that I have been surprised how much there is available in some schools and sadly not in others, but it's worth checking out as you're considering that if you are one of those students.
One of the largest growth areas for summer activities has been students taking online courses, not credit bearing. That's certainly different when you're trying to get ahead or you're taking an AP class. These are classes that tend to focus on skills development. They oftentimes have a mix of professors from colleges or universities, but also industry leaders, and they can be remarkably affordable. We actually see some students take one in the spring semester to confirm an area of interest or develop a skill that helps influence their summer plans. There are a couple of sites that host courses from top-notch colleges or universities. edX tends to be one that gets lots of attention. And then there are really great sites that allow students to develop skills, both soft skills and hard skills. Codecademy is great for that student who wants to do her first coding project. Udemy is a great place where a student can really dive deeper based on their engagement at their high school to develop a skill or area of knowledge. Now, many families are at this place of saying, how do we plan? Where do we start? And in our 15 years of work, we are big fans of starting with the students' aptitudes, skills, and motivations, not with Google Maps instructions. Starting with what excites them, what motivates them, what are their inherent aptitudes, and how can that then help them think through where to take initiative based on that involvement. Many kids spend time during the school year involved in a club or really focused on things that interest them. Summer can be a great time, as Lisa said and everyone else said, to explore, but it's also a great time to look at where can I step it up and where can I make a lasting impact. Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit about summer planning as it relates to different grade levels?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's really important, and Allison said this at one point, which is it's okay to explore. It's okay to explore in the 11th grade. But if we were to just go on a kind of natural trajectory, so that I don't want to freak anybody out because there are 11th graders that are at the, so we can mix and match. But if we were just to say developmentally, 9th grader is usually where students are just getting their feet wet and starting to get involved and those kind of things. If you wanted to do something after the 9th grade summer, I think unless your student already has a very specific narrow focus, broader may be better to give them a chance to explore. And I am getting a lot of questions from my 9th grade parents about, is it okay if they go to summer camp or do their soccer? Yes, yes, yes. They're 9th graders. So, there's definitely a difference by summer. I think 10th grade is a great year to start exploring what possible majors you might want to be in. That's not necessarily to nail it down, but to explore it. And I think the summer after 10th grade is a great time to explore a major in many of the things we've been talking about, so that in the 11th grade, you could then do something that stepped it up, that took that forward with more initiative and impact. So I think looking at where your student is, both by grade and then their personal development, because all students are different, is really important. The college process is right now very focused on students knowing their major, whether we like it or not. We could debate that forever. I have my opinion, everybody has theirs, but it is. So your student is going to be asked to reflect on at least their areas of interest, even if they don't necessarily nail it down to one. So somehow, some way they've got to explore that. Obviously, school is one way, but summers can be a great way for that. And I think 11th grade is really where you hope to pull it all together that summer after 11th grade. Of course, that summer's busy with college applications and other things, but I think there's some ways to do that, which don't necessarily take a ton more time, but to start pulling that thread through from those things you've done in the earlier years. And for other students, 11th grade's a great time to start exploring what they want to major in because they're about to do their college application. So I think it kind of depends on where your student is at, but yeah. Now, one of the things that I think is most powerful and that I think people don't always think about is how to chain your activities, okay? So how to take your love of Spanish and your love of teaching, or your love of Spanish and your love of art, or your love of coding and your love of music, how to kind of make these things work together. One of the things we see students sometimes thinking is they've always got to come up with something new. I would argue that the first place to start is what are you enjoying now and how can you grow with that versus bringing in a whole lot of new things. So the reason we talk about chaining is how do you pull things together to work off of each other, or how do you take, okay, so you love soccer and all your time is dedicated to soccer and you really don't have more time. What are things you can do in your soccer club to show that, oh, you want to be a communications major? Okay, can you be the social media person? Can you, what are ways that you can use those things that you already have, put them together to start looking like other things where the student is actually genuinely into that versus just pulling a bunch of really different things out or thinking you have to start all the way over. And so that's a concept that we work a lot with our students on. Not to say sometimes it's great to start something new, right? Sometimes something new is incredibly exciting. But I think we often forget about working with what we already have. As Claudia said, I could not agree more. You got to know your goal. If you don't know your goal in the summer, you're just going to be throwing darts, right? And so you want to have a goal. We've developed a few tools to help our students kind of reflect on that. You may be hearing the word reflect a lot. This is all a reflective process. And so one of the things that we try to do is build tools to help kids scaffold that because they're not used to having to reflect. It's a new muscle. If we can do that now before they get to the college process, it's going to be a lot easier for them. So sometimes having them do, a little bit of evaluation, whether it's a little tool like this or just a conversation, can be really, really helpful. We have a few case studies that we have had the opportunity of students that we've worked with, just to give you a quick snap of like how they started in one place and got to another place. And so we thought that that might be helpful. One of my students did start out, he loved animals more than life itself. So he started out volunteering in the 9th grade at Austin Pets Alive. Then he went on I think it might've been Rustic Pathways, I'm not sure, a travel trip that focused on Australian kangaroos. And that was really meaningful to him. And he got interested in this specific habitat way that they were working with a certain species of animals. And he actually went back the following summer on his own and did research on these kangaroos. So he started from Austin Pets Alive and ended up with a pretty sophisticated research on a very unique part of Australian kangaroos. So that's just one example of where a student started and went. Bob?
I worked with a student. They had incredible skills. They really started by having their dad buy a drone for them. And then over time, not only did they fly those drones, but they began to see that there was a business opportunity. This is a student motivated by being really enterprising. They built a business selling drone videos to real estate agents, and it was an incredible opportunity. They did this over the summers, and you could see the kind of chaining that Lisa talked about. Allison, I know you have a unique student that you've worked with.
That's right. So this was a student, I love this story because this was an example of a student who thought she was interested in interior design, did some shadowing and realized she was not interested in interior design, kind of came back and said, so now what? I did my internship, but I didn't like it. And so she started the next school year. She was on the dance team and began to discover that what she did love was all forms of communication. And as she was exploring that major and doing informational interviews about communications careers, she decided to apply to be the social officer on the dance team where she could run the social media, kind of try that out. At the same time, she was on the student council and decided that she would try to do a poll of students just to kind of try out that kind of communication, and actually ended up using those experiences in an application to become a congressional campaign intern, which she did all summer, which by the way, got her lots of communication because she knocked on doors for 8 hours a day.
Now, another example that a student I work with did is when he was in middle school, he loved Minecraft. I think that makes him like 70% of other young men. And in that love of Minecraft, he built mods and exchanged mods with his friends. He then took a Code Academy class in the summer before his freshman year. He took CS classes at high school. In summer before sophomore year, he did an internship at his mom's company. He was what he referred to as a QA monkey, and he loved it. And he went on to do a formal research project like Claudia did. He paid to be part of that program. And if he had stopped there, he had a lot of involvement, not much initiative, not much impact, but a lot of involvement. But that set him up to then take those research skills and those interests in technology and to be part of a social media research project on the impact of social media on teenagers' mental health. I will tell you as an adult, it was a moving research project to see. I will tell you that that student was incredibly motivated and powerfully focused on the common good. And you can imagine how a college will read that involvement when that student either links to that research project or talks about it in his essay. Now, Lisa, we have a number of parents on today's Zoom. Can you talk a little bit about the good practices that you've seen for parents?
Absolutely. I think parents are a key resource for students in this process. I think that for the whole college process. I think the first thing is to really listen to your student about what they're interested in. Sometimes it surprises us. I know that happened with me with one of our daughters. She came to me and said, I want to do this. And I'm like, you want to do what? And then that probably wasn't the best response, but she genuinely did. And it did go on to connect with some things she ultimately was interested in. As Bob mentioned, a lot of the things we're talking about, especially in terms of internships, are only going to happen if you help connect them to resources. And so it does ask for something from parents, which can be very helpful. I also want to mention, and we've said this once, is for some students who are maybe slower to come to this kind of thing, pursuing some things as a family. I had a student who was maybe a little bit of a Leo, the late bloomer, brilliant kid. And he was interested in history. So his parents took him around to different historical sites and he did these videos. But the truth is he would not have done them if they hadn't partnered with him. The content was all his and not the intellectual ideas, but he needed a little boost. So you know your child, and there are some kids who might need a little more help from you. The last thing that we've already mentioned is encourage reflection in your home. It's going to help them in the college process, and it's going to help them in determining how they want to be engaged.
Now, we sure appreciate your time today and all the great questions. We have a number of guides to help families and parents and students and counselors navigate what can oftentimes be stressful or confusing. We'll share in the follow-up note our guide to summer planning, our guide to activity planning. We talked a little bit about majors, and that can be confusing and stressful for students, and we have a guide for that. Next month, because the focus on college tends to pick up with the new year, we'll have 2 webinars, one on college tours and one a deeper dive on college admissions of highly selective schools. And we'll share that in our follow-up note for a sign up. We are at our time point. If you want to stay on for a minute or 2 more and ask any questions, we'll be on. If not, we sure appreciate your time, and we'll follow up with the materials tomorrow. Please feel free to ask us any questions we can help with, and we hope you have a great rest of the Sunday. Thanks so much.